Today I'm going to be answering questions that have been asked by the community here that follows this channel on my Instagram page. This is the first video of its type on the channel, so if you've got any questions at all, be sure to drop them in the comments below or ask me on Instagram, Facebook, wherever. If you're new here and this is the first video you're watching of mine, hi, I'm a percussionist based in Glasgow, specialising mainly in Brazilian percussion, but I'm sort of a self-identified world music geek and music geek in general. First question comes from Dragidov on YouTube. They asked me this question a little while ago. What kind of stand do you use for your timbal? So I'm using this easel stand for my timbal. It's specifically a timbal stand. It's got a nice crossbar at the bottom so you can put your foot down, because unlike congas, timbals are so prone to running away when they're in a stand. Congas get that too, but because timbals are so light compared to congas, they will just run away. At the moment, the easel one is the only one that you can really get in Europe. When I do go back to Brazil, I will be buying a different one because this is super bulky. Like, it doesn't compact down in any way. It's a pain to adjust. Like, you can't really properly adjust it without taking apart the screws. The feet on the bottom aren't very durable. I've had this for like 7 or 8 years now, and the rubber feet are just completely worn away, so it's just metal on the ground. The only way I've been able to really adjust this stand is by buying black rope, because underneath that's what's already there, and adding more layers of rope around the basket. It's not a fun process, but it works. And another downside to this is that it's quite expensive for what it is. Like, it was £120 plus shipping from Germany. And then had a follow-up conversation with Dragidov in the comments above that video, talking about, can I just use a conga stand? And I would say yes, but quite limited. Like, I wouldn't use it on a regular basis because I did that. And conga stands are built for congas, so the shape of the conga stand isn't great for the timbal. Like, the rubber bits don't grip onto the timbal. That means that the thing holding the timbal in the basket itself is the metal. So after a while, that can actually damage the shell of the instrument. I've had that with my older timbal when I used just my conga stands. So I would avoid that if at all possible. But if you do it a few times, it's gonna be fine. Do you think that to play with a Marco Susano style, an 11 or 12 inch pandeiro is better than a 10 inch? I know that practice and not size is important for that, but I just want to buy an appropriate one. So generally, Marco Susano pandeiro moderno style is played with a pandeiro pellicuro, which just means a natural headed pandeiro. The typical size for that is 10 inches or less. As soon as you get into 11 or 12, it tends to be, from most brands, that's when you get into the nylon territory. The pandeiro moderno technique is really based on having a really low tune pandeiro where you can manipulate the tension in the head with your thumb so that you can play bass lines and just bring out different flavors of the pandeiro, which doesn't really work on a nylon skin. So generally, I would say having 10 inch is the best way to go. In addition to that, the moderno technique relies on you twisting your left wrist the whole time to make the platinellas go. That's going to be a lot harder with a heavier pandeiro, and the bigger they are, the heavier they are. Anyone who's thinking about pandeiro moderno, getting a pellicuro pandeiro, one with a natural head, and getting it about 10 inches. Next question. When teaching workshops, do you have a favourite warm-up game? That's a really good one. So for those who don't know, I teach workshops on a regular basis around Scotland, and it's a really hard one to answer. It's a good question, but a hard one, because I always shift my warm-up game depending on specifically who I've got in the workshop, right? I kind of assess the group as they're literally as they're walking in the door, and then I make a couple of decisions based on the energy of the group, the vibe, what I want to achieve, what I think they want to achieve. I'll give you 2 examples of games that I really love. The first one is a rhythmic one. It's kind of a game, but also like a warm-up activity, so less of like an icebreaker, which I think is maybe the context of the question, but it's still a really good warm-up. Is essentially just call and response games. So I clap something, everyone claps it back. Everything from like really simple 1, 2, 3, 4 to triplets to using other body percussion things, just to kind of get them thinking on their feet, get them listening to each other and try to play in sync with one another as a group. One thing I love doing with this as well is for me, it's kind of a litmus test of the class. What is their natural aptitude? How much drumming have they already done? What do they know? What can they play? So if I'm able to play like just a 3/2 clave and they all play it back perfectly, then I know, okay, we can maybe work with that material wise, or that's gonna be okay. But if I do that and people struggle with that, then I'm thinking, okay, how can I simplify things? How can I change my plan? So I'm already walking in with an idea of a rhythm in mind that I might work with. And this sort of copy and answer, call and response warm-up game helps me assess how suitable that is. So that's when I do it all the time, without fail. Another fun warm-up game that's also a bit of an icebreaker, it's a really silly one called Rubber Chicken. I kind of stole a gag from one of my teachers, Matt Clements, where you bring like a squeaky rubber chicken with you. I do it sometimes, I don't always bring the chicken, because then there's an expectation that you always have the chicken. And it can be distracting for some classes of children. But effectively, you're playing this game where you're shaking each of your limbs. You start off with shaking your right hand in the air 8 times, and you have to count aloud, like really loud, and you want the kids to just go, ah. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Then the left hand, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, right leg, left leg. Then once you've done each limb, then do it 7 times, then 6 times, then 5 times, 4, 3, 2, last 1, 1, 1, 1. And everyone jumps up in the air and shouts Rubber Chicken. It's a good energizer. It's good to get a bit of silliness out of the way and show them that you can be fun. Up next is a question from Pedro. Pedro asks, hey Jordan, does the Pro 35 stay in place firmly? Does it move around at all, or even fall off maybe? Well, you'll be happy to hear that I've had this microphone now since the very end of 2020. I have literally never had any problems with it falling off of a pandeiro. I've had it fall off other instruments, but never a pandeiro. And the only time it's fallen off other instruments, like I've used it for repiki, I've used it for caixa, I've used it for surdo, I've used it for congas. I've used it for a bit of everything. The only time that it's fallen off is just simply because there isn't like a good way for it to grip on. Like as soon as there's a little bit for it to grip on, it's fine. Like when I've used it for repikis, if the rim is too narrow in the repiki, then I can't use it. My only like beef with the microphone really is when you're playing in a live setting, it's so loud. Like you don't really need to put much gain on it most of the time, and it's actually hard to find the balance between you can't hear anything and it's clipping and distorting through the PA. So that's difficult, but worth it. Are there any natural skin pandeiros that you would recommend? Ooh, it depends on your budget. Personally, I don't think you can go wrong with any Brazilian brand for pandeiros specifically. Whilst I love the work that many other manufacturers and brands do in different areas, there's just something about when a brand, say like LP, makes a pandeiro, there's something about it that just misses the mark for me. I don't quite know what it is. That's nothing against LP, they make the best timbales. But when it comes to Brazilian instruments, I think just getting them from Brazilian manufacturers is the way to go. I personally have like a relationship with the people over at Contemporânea in Sao Paulo. So I would always recommend their products because I love them and they've been supportive of me. So this here is my first ever pandeiro. Contemporânea from a line that doesn't exist anymore called Ginga. Original head, original platinellas, not quite all of them. I think I got this for maybe like 50, 60 pounds at the time, and this has been with me since 2015, 2014. Great instrument, really stood the test of time. If you're not so concerned about budget, I would recommend the Contemporânea Luthier model because that's just pandeiro of my dreams. It's so nice. And if you're looking for something a bit more specialized, I would look into finding a pandeiro luthier, like an independent maker that can make a pandeiro that suits you. How did you get into Brazilian music specifically, and why? Oh, that takes me back. So I got into Brazilian music in 2009 when I was a child. I I was already involved in a community centre in North Edinburgh, which just so happened to have a community samba band for young people specifically, so like 8 to 25. And I'd been going to this community centre, taking part in other activities like filmmaking and drama and whatever else. And I had a resistance to drumming at first. I was like, oh, I don't know if I want to go. And eventually I ended up being in the right place at the right time, that, oh, the drumming's about to start and I'm available, and I'm already here. Sure, let's do it. And I was put on a high surdo, and I was basically in the middle of the whole band. Now this group, Pulse of the Place, are incredible. They've got a really unique way of working. And I just remember, like, so vividly, the whole band coming in from like a rep call, and just the energy and the vibration that I got from that was just instantly, I fell in love with drumming in general. I was already into guitar and singing as a kid. I'd been doing that in exams in school, but there was something about playing drums with like 20 other people that really just unlocked the door for me. So whilst that was great exposure and we're using Brazilian instruments, we didn't play a lot of Brazilian music, strictly speaking. Over the years, we kind of added in other rhythms. Some of them were more Brazilian than others. Eventually I got really lucky. I was at 15. I took part in a course run by Global Grooves in Manchester called Future Leaders, which was all about carnival arts training and like training the next generation of carnival arts leaders in the UK. I was on the first iteration of the course, and that opened my eyes to specifically more Brazilian rhythms, which I'd been kind of wanting to play. In addition to that, it opened me up to the cultural aspects behind the music, which I hadn't really accessed before. So those two things combined were a game changer. I was already interested in like other school subjects about cultural aspects of things, but I'd never put two and two together of like, oh yeah, of course, all this music like has a culture, and there are languages and foods and art that goes with it, and there's a history of how this music came to be. And it was through that, combined with that initial thing of, I love doing this and there's something magical about playing drums with like lots of people. Those three things combined just really drew me. Those factors drew me specifically to Brazilian drumming, and I've never really looked back. And final question for today, how many instruments do you own? Oh god. Quite a lot. I don't actually know the exact number, but it's worth saying before I do that, this is stuff that I've gathered over the last kind of half of my life playing music in some capacity or another. I'm going to show you what I've got and count it all up. If you want to stick around for that, that's cool. If not, no worries. I hope to see you in the next video on the channel. The one coming out next week, because this is in addition to my every 2 week upload schedule that I've been working with this year, which works for me, which is great. If you've got any questions, leave them in the comments below, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.